I want to tell you about the morning I asked a stranger for help, and how that stranger quietly changed the rest of my life. I didn't know he would do that. I didn't know anything about him, except that he was standing outside my building in a coat that had seen 30 winters, holding a paper coffee cup with both hands like it was the most valuable thing he owned. I was late for a 7 o'clock briefing. I had my phone out, my bag on my shoulder, and exactly zero intention of slowing down. He didn't beg. That's the first thing I want you to understand. He didn't hold out his hand or block the door. He just looked at me when I passed and said quietly, "Morning. Any chance you need an extra pair of hands today?" I'm good at most things. I don't know why I stopped. I had walked past men like him before. I'm ashamed to say it plainly, but it's true. That morning, something made me turn around. His eyes were calm, not defeated, not desperate. Calm and patient the way a man looks when he has learned that the world moves at its own pace, and he has stopped arguing with it. I asked him his name. He said Elias. I asked him what he was good at. He thought for a second. Listening, he said. Fixing small things. Talking to people who've had a hard go of it. I was a chaplain for 31 years. Hospice and grief work, mostly. I'm decent with my hands, too, if you have something that needs doing. I stood there on that sidewalk for longer than my schedule allowed. Then I told him to come inside and talk to my office manager, Carol, and that if she had something for him to do, he'd be paid a fair wage for the day. That was the beginning. Carol put him to work in the storage annex on the third floor, a room that had been accumulating broken furniture, outdated equipment, and 30 years of decisions nobody wanted to make. She expected him to move boxes. By noon, she came to find me and told me she'd been crying in the break room for 10 minutes. I went up to see what had happened. Elias was sitting on an overturned crate with Carol's assistant, a young woman named Petra, who had lost her brother 4 months earlier and hadn't told anyone she was still barely keeping herself together. He wasn't fixing anything. He was just sitting with her, listening, saying maybe 6 words for every 100 she said. When he saw me come in, he stood up without a word, no embarrassment, no explanation needed. Later, I asked Petra about it. She said he'd simply noticed. He noticed I'd been crying before I walked in, she said. He didn't make it a thing. He just sat down and asked if the grief was fresh or old. And when I told him, he said, "Both kinds are heavy. You don't have to carry it like it isn't." That was it. No sermon, no advice. Just that. I kept him on for the rest of the week. Then the week after. Not out of pity, that became clear to me fast. Elias didn't want pity. He wanted work, and he worked. He repaired 3 chairs that facilities had tagged for disposal. He reorganized the third floor so thoroughly that we stopped losing documents. He learned every person on that floor by name inside of 48 hours, and he remembered things about them. Not gossip, not small talk, but the things that mattered. He remembered that the man in accounting had just become a grandfather. He remembered that the woman in legal had a sister in the hospital. He didn't trade in that information. He just held it the way a good person holds what they're trusted with. I asked him one evening, when the building had gone quiet, how he'd ended up outside my door. He told me without any drama. His wife had died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, fast and merciless. He had spent everything. Their savings, the house, his retirement, trying to buy her more time, and he didn't regret $1 of it. After she was gone, he had no infrastructure left. No family in the city, no income, no address. He'd been moving between shelters and day work for 2 winters. His son, Marcus, lived in another state and didn't know how bad it had gotten. I didn't want him to worry, Elias said. He's got his own family to tend. I asked him why he hadn't reached out to his old parish, his old hospice network, anyone. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Pride is a funny thing. I spent 30 years helping people lay it down, and then I found out I hadn't fully learned that lesson myself." He said it with a wry, gentle smile, not bitterness, just honesty. I went home that night, and I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about all the people I had walked past, all the conversations I had cut short because I was late for something, all the suffering I had filed away as someone else's department. I am not an unkind woman. I have always told myself that. But kindness and attention are not the same thing. And Elias had spent 31 years knowing the difference. I called Marcus the next morning. I won't say more than that, because what happened between a father and his son isn't my story to tell. But I will tell you that Marcus drove 14 hours, and that when he arrived at my building and saw his father, neither of them said anything for a long moment. And I will tell you that Elias looked at me over his son's shoulder with an expression I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve. 6 months later, Elias holds a real position on our staff, not a charity post. He runs what we now call the people and wellness side of our HR function, which is a corporate way of saying he does what he has always done. He sits with people, he listens, he notices. He helped us design a grief leave policy that actually works. He runs a quiet, optional session on Friday mornings for anyone going through something hard. No agenda, no slideshows, just a room and a man who knows how to hold space. The session is always full. Our turnover in the last 2 quarters has dropped by a number that has made our board pay close attention. They want to know what changed. I tell them we hired a chaplain. They look at me like they're waiting for the rest of the sentence, and I tell them that's all of it. There is one more thing I want to say, and it is the part that still catches me when I'm not expecting it. One afternoon, about 3 months in, I found a journal on the break room table, a composition notebook, black cover, plain. Someone had left it behind. I opened it to the first page to see whose it was, and the first line read, "People are not problems to be solved. They are stories that need a witness." I read the whole thing standing at the table. It was 30 years of notes, observations, prayers, things people had said to him in their last weeks, things he had learned slowly and painfully, and with great love. It wasn't written to be read by anyone else. It was written the way a craftsman keeps notes on his work, because the work mattered and deserved to be remembered. I closed it and set it back where I found it. I never told him I read it, but I think of that first line almost every day. People are not problems to be solved. They are stories that need a witness. I don't know how many stories I walked past before that morning. I don't know how many Eliases I never stopped for. I know that the morning I did stop, my building got quieter and warmer, and I believe better. I know that a man who had spent 31 years giving himself away got something back. And I know that whatever I thought I was running to in such a hurry that morning, it was nowhere near as important as the calm, patient man standing at my door with a paper cup and 30 winters is his coat, asking for nothing more than a fair chance. He never asked me to be moved by him. He never asked me to change. He just showed up and was exactly, completely himself, and the rest followed. That I have come to understand is what dignity actually looks like, not the loud kind, the kind that stands quietly in the cold and waits for the world to catch up. I'm still catching up. But for the first time in a long time, I'm paying attention.